Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another session with Medical HS. Today we have with us Mitali Chansarkar. Um, Ms. Chansarkar is a third-year medical student who will tell us about her experiences in med school. Before we start, I want to remind everybody to put any questions that they have in the chat so we can go over them after the presentation. And also, please keep your cameras off and yourselves muted. Remember that there will be a quiz posted after our session in the bio, and you need to get a 75 or higher to get credit for this session. That's about it. You can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Ishan, for the introduction. So yes, my name is Mitali. I'm a third-year medical student at AUC, which is American University of the Caribbean, and I previously did my undergrad in New York Institute of Technology. And in my free time, I like to document my medical journey and share some stories on my IG page, Future Artist MD. And currently, I'm a blog writer for one of the USMLE board prep companies called Physeo. And I love to share my advice to pre-med and medical students through that. So I'm also a huge advocate for healthy lifestyle and creating a balanced life. For everyone, balance looks different. For me, I'm blessed to pick from multiple hobbies that keep me centered and give me more energy to be productive. As I'm studying every day, I encourage everyone to work hard, but also take care of their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Without you feeling your best, you cannot achieve your best. So that's my little spiel introduction. So let's just continue. So my journey started like back when I was in high school. So just a little background of like where I'm coming from. I'm from San Diego, and I ended up doing college in New York through NYT, and I ended up surviving. Like I ended up in St. Martin for medical school, and on my first day of medical school, I ended up surviving a Cat 5 hurricane, and then the U.S. military evacuated us for like 5 days later, and eventually we all got relocated to the UK where we did our first semester there. And then we came all back to St. Martin to finish the remaining like 4 semesters. So how it works, I think, in medical school is that your first 2 years are more lecture-based, and the next 2 years are clinical. So right now I'm in my third year, so we're more in the hospital learning rather than in the classrooms. So after I came back from St. Martin, I was in San Diego studying for my board exams. And then while I was studying, COVID hit and it got postponed. But eventually, I'm thankful that I'm back in NY again for clinicals. So far I've taken surgery, internal medicine, and I just finished OB-GYN. And my next one is psychiatry. So pretty excited. So a lot of people ask that where it started, like why I got interested in medicine. So for me, it all started when I was in high school. My mother is a breast cancer survivor, and during her remission, we started to bleed. Slowly, I realized that we can formalize our efforts into a fundraiser. Over the years, we made and sold jewelry for cancer research at several venues while educating women on health and wellness. And this inspired me to also volunteer in research at UCSD, and I started to enjoy not only like the analytical side of medicine, but also the patient care and the relationships you form. I also had the opportunity to shadow surgeons when I was at West Houston Hospital, and I was grateful to be a part of a surgical medical mission trip in Guatemala. And that experience definitely gave me a different perspective to medicine, and it reaffirmed my aspiration to become a physician. So that's my spiel on that. And if I wanted to give any advice to someone who's interested in medicine or pursuing the medical field, these are like my couple of like 2 cents about this. I think the first priority is that you have to have a good GPA and MCAT, because even though I know the score doesn't define anyone, but you need that score in order to get your foot in the door. And then all these other experiences, shadowing, volunteering, research, leadership, they also supplement your application very well. Shadowing is really good, not only for your application to show that you're interested in medicine, but also to show also for you to really get into like a sneak peek into the medical field and really like figure out if this is what you want. And this is also a good way to like network with other doctors and form that kind of like relationships. And volunteering, it doesn't have to be necessarily at a hospital. It could also be like very simple, like at a soup kitchen or something like that, or like donating something. And then research is kind of research is important. It kind of gives you like a good view into like the research side of medicine, and letters of recommendation are good. It's important to have good letters of recommendation. So some tips on getting good letters of recommendation is the person, you should be someone that can advocate for you at the end of the day. So someone that also knows you. So it's really good to form those kind of relationships with your professors and with the doctors that you are working with too. So that would be a good asset to your application. And also when it comes to, if I were to give more advice, um, it's important to learn how to prioritize active learning compared to passive learning. So active learning means like your it's more like the word says active. So I would encourage you to, like, whenever you're studying, like, ask questions. So for example, if you were learning about the action potential, how that works, you should know not only each step of the action potential, but why each step of the action potential is happening. Or like if it's the cardiac cell action potential, you should know the same things for that. And at each step of the action potential, what is happening to the heart? Is it filling? Is it compressing? Such and such. And by asking those type of questions, you can you actually understand the subject better. And because you understand the subject better, you won't be able to, you will, excuse me, because you understand the subject better, you will be able to memorize less, if that makes sense. Because it will be able to stick more in your brain. So the next step I would recommend is to do a lot of repetition. So some people like to use Anki. Personally, I'm not like a huge Anki person. And I like to have like a friend that I'm studying with quiz me. So we both like quiz each other, and it's a lot, for me, it was like a lot more active way of actually like testing if I really knew the stuff or not. And practice questions are a good way to test not only what you know, but also test you how to take practice so you can how to take a test on real test day, because most of our exams are actually multiple choice. So it's important to learn how to take a multiple choice exam. And that also I would recommend to teach, because once you teach, it also sticks better as well. And I would suggest finding a study strategy works for you. From most people I know, everyone studies differently. So find something that works for you, but also be aware that sometimes your strategy might change depending on which class you are. So that kind of goes into the whole adaptability thing. And I think I'm going to tell a story that will kind of help put it all together. So I remember when I was in medical school, well, still in medical school, but when I was in biochemistry, I know in the beginning I was struggling with that class because I wasn't sure like what to focus on and like how to exactly study for it. So I know this is a good way to, you know, reach out and ask for help. So I seeked advice for some upperclassmen, and and to watch some Kaplan videos, and they did help, but it wasn't enough for me. So someone else suggested that I should go to office hours and maybe like ask the professor. So luckily my professor offered office hours, and it was really helpful to go to him and ask questions and figure out like how to study for it. So yes, and the whole asking questions thing, it also kind of ties into the whole office hours. Yeah. So on the island, this is kind of like an overall like picture of how my day would look like. So we have lecture from 8 a.m. to 11:30, and then lunch. And then I personally like to use a study buddy because for like because my study buddy was with two of my classes. So from one to like maybe 4 or 5, depending on when like the yoga or Zoom class was, we would just like go over that day's lectures and also do the questions specific to that day's lectures so that we would stay on top of it. And then after I would go to yoga and Zumba. Luckily, our school offered those classes. So I went there, took my mind, took a break, mind break, took a break, and I ended up studying using like the remaining time to study for the stuff I didn't study with my study buddy. So yeah, and I would also by studying I would not only like finish taking notes during the lecture, but I would also like do the practice questions as well. And after dinner, I spent like an hour or 30 minutes pre-watching or pre-reading the next day's lecture. So it helped pre-watching really helped me prime like what kind of the important topics that are going to be for tomorrow's lecture. And that I think helped kind of made me feel less lost during lecture. And I think right now during clinical rotations, my daily schedule kind of varies depending on the day and the rotation. So for surgery, I had a little bit more intense schedule. It was 5:45 to maybe 4 or 5, but sometimes later. But there was a lot of downtime in between, so I was able to like study in between. But I think for other rotations, it depends on like the hospital, but I think for IM, I had a lot more like downtime after the hospital to study for my rotation because after every rotation we have a shelf exam. So not only we had to juggle balancing the hospital, but we also had to juggle hospital rotation requirements. We also had to juggle studying to pass our exams. But but honestly, I'm pretty happy being at this space because it's like the textbooks coming to life and it's a lot more application. So, and the things I like to do for fun, I am an Indian classical dancer and singer, and I like to paint, sketch, reading, and also I like to blog. So I like to do it through Fazeo and also through Instagram. So I like to document my journey and then also like give advice on what to do. And I would suggest like for anyone to pick a hobby that you enjoy because it's a good mental break from studying and it helps you grow in other areas other than medicine. And I think that's important for your self growth and something to kind of fall back on when there's like a stressful day. You can just fall back and then recharge and then get back to what you need to do. So that was it I had for on my end. Um, I know it was kind of short, but I wanted to like put make it make it. I didn't want to like take time away from any questions that were here. So
Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. And yeah, if anybody has questions, please put them in the chat. I'm checking the YouTube live chat right now. And while we are waiting for questions, so I do have a few of my own. One is that, I'm sorry?
I didn't want to like take time away from any questions that were here.
Okay, so is there any particular reason that you chose to go to St. Martin's as opposed to a more mainstream school?
I think generally speaking, it's ideal to go to a US school. For me, I think it didn't work out. Like sometimes, like when you try your best, it doesn't work out, and AUC was like the best next option. And I've been pretty happy here. It was a little pretty nurturing school, and I've been learning a lot through it. Oh, ideally you want to aim for US MD or DO schools, but if that doesn't work out for whatever reason, then going to a Caribbean school is not a bad option. And that too, like the top, SGU, AUC, or Ross.
Okay. Um, so are there any particularly memorable, I guess, patient interactions that you've had throughout your journey in the medical field?
Yeah, there were. I think the hospital I'm in right now is in the Bronx. So there's a lot of underprivileged population here. And I think, like because of that, you see an interesting interesting clinical population. So I saw a lot of like different cases of scabies, um, different TB, listeria, like, and also like there are a lot of people with complications. So like in my last OB-GYN rotation, there was like it would be common for hypertension, diabetes type patient, gestational diabetes. Um, and I think this is a sad story. Oh well. um, well, I think for one of my patients, she came in with vaginal bleeding and she was like 33 weeks pregnant, but she came in with sudden onset severe hypertension. And eventually we did the ultrasound, but there was no fetal heart rate. So there's like sometimes there are lows like that in where there are cases that you can't do much about. But then there are like really good cases in where it's really rewarding.
So how you mentioned that so like the case study that you just mentioned, how did you, I guess, get used to breaking bad news? Does
um,
it get easier with time?
um, I think so. I think as a medical student, we do need more practice in it, even though the school does prepare us. And I'm still like early in the journey, so I'm still learning about it. Um, on like how to do it. I think the more you practice, the better you get at it. Um, and since I'm a student, like personally speaking, I haven't broken the bad news to people, but I've been shadowed in conversations and where like you had to break the bad news. And from just listening, you do learn a lot on what can be said to make it a little bit more easier.
Okay. Um, have there been any rotations that have stuck out to you as something that you'd want to continue past medical school?
Right now, I'm keeping an open mind. um, because I still have 3 more in my third year, and then also I have elective choices. So I'm just keeping an open mind right now and seeing what I like and don't like.
And also, how is it keeping a healthy, I guess, school life balance in medical school? I've heard that it's pretty tough for some students.
I think it is, but I think at the end of the day, it's time management. So you will put in the priority for things that you find important. So, um, like I would suggest, like sometimes people have, like I used to have this tendency where like I would study, but I would sit on the computer for hours, like just rereading the whole thing um, again. And I found that was counterproductive. So maybe I would put like a timer, like maybe like within 1 or 1.5 hours, I would like get up and like take a break, like take a walk outside or something like that, and come back. Um, so yeah, so I think it's about time management, and it's also about knowing yourself on like what works for you and what doesn't.
Um, I have one last question, and again, if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. My last question is, are there any mistakes that you've made throughout your journey that you feel made you a better student and that you'd want to share with us?
Um, Mistakes as in like in the first 2 years or like now or or anytime?
In general, like
In general.
yeah.
Okay. I think I definitely made the mistake of memorizing everything instead of understanding everything. I think that was like the one of the biggest mistakes I made. But I think I've learned. I think at the end of the day, I learned from it, and I just try to tell people don't just memorize because there's a lot of content. So just memorize in medical schools, and just memorizing it won't be enough. So
Okay. It doesn't look like we have any questions, but if I do get any more after the session, I will definitely reach out to you for
okay.
so thank you so much for this presentation. It was wonderful, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful.